Greetings once again from Cooperstown, New York, site of the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. And thank you for joining us as we continue our series of virtual Voices of the Game programs. For those of you who are not familiar with us or with me, my name is Bruce Marcuson. I work in the Education Department. And today it'll be my privilege and pleasure to talk to Jenny Dalton-Hill. Jenny was a star softball player at the University of Arizona. From there, went on to become a standout with the Colorado Silver Bullets during what turned out to be their final year of existence. Played for a general manager by the name of Phil Niekro. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about some women in baseball topics in general, kind of the state of women in baseball right now. Jenny, pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for being with us today. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. It is so exciting to be able to just talk to people who are in such a pretty iconic place.
Of course, you're a broadcaster now, and you're still doing a lot of broadcasting from home, from remotely, correct?
Right. I work with ESPN now as a commentator for softball. And so right now, ESPN has us on an at-home basis. And so all of the games that I call from right here in my own office, and we call the games and hopefully bring them to you here at home.
Well, we thank Jenny for joining us. We thank our sponsor as well, the Ford Motor Company, for making this program possible through their generous financial support. They'll be doing that throughout 2021. Jenny, let's go back to those years when you were a Wildcat. I'm reminded of the scene from the movie Speed when Dennis Hopper keeps referring to Sandra Bullock as that Wildcat. And nobody picked up on the fact that he's referring to the Arizona Wildcats, where you played 1993 to 1996. And I was looking at your statistics, and I wasn't really that impressed. 469 batting average as a senior, a 966 slugging percentage. You batted 400 over a 4-year career. I mean, the numbers are awe-inspiring. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, playing at the University of Arizona was such a privilege to play for Mike Candrea. He's a baseball guy. And so he treated us a lot like baseball players. We were coming along early in his career. He had won a national championship with the team in 1991, but we didn't know how good we were. He never let us get too high and he never let us get too low. And so stats back then were something that we weren't privy to. I know a lot of athletes these days just turn on the internet and find the stats that they have as they play. But back then we didn't know what our stats were. Our job was to win ball games and win ultimately the one at the end of the year. And so we were privileged to be able to play in 4 national championship games while I was a Wildcat and come away with 3 national championships.
Now that's interesting. The coach kept the information away from you. There was, I guess the internet was just starting to come into popularity. Maybe it was a couple of years later that, people would start referring to the internet and more information was being made available online. But there was no resource for you to go to. You must have been curious about what your numbers were.
Well, I knew I wasn't at the top. We had so many batters in our lineup that were fast and sat in the 1 and 2 slot in our lineup. I hit in the 3 slot. And I knew that my job was to be the most consistent hitter in the lineup, whether that meant hitting home runs or just moving runners. My job as a 3-hole hitter was to be the most consistent on the team. But my batting average did not technically always lead the team. I am grateful, though, that after, I guess I'm going to age myself, almost 30 years, my RBI, my career RBI number is still the national record. And so I had fast athletes in front of me, but then my job was to hit them around, and I was pretty successful at it. And then my runs scored record, I'm now number 2 on the list. That got beat 3 or 4 years ago by Sierra Romero out of Michigan. But I was surrounded by amazing athletes, but Bruce, we didn't know what our stats were, and it really didn't matter. Our job as a team was to come together and win national championships.
One of the numbers that jumped out at me was the number of walks that you drew. You were obviously a very patient hitter, a very disciplined hitter. And that's something that has gained a lot of appreciation, the sabermetric approach to baseball, softball, the idea of working the count, drawing walks, that sort of thing. And that was a part of the game that you had a pretty good handle on.
Well, and I led the country in my senior year in walks, but a lot of that came from the fact that the hitters that came behind me, a lot of them had graduated or were not playing that year. And so I was being walked to get to other hitters. But the best part about it is those hitters behind me started to be really dynamic. And so they had to start pitching to me. And so in 96, I actually was able to gather the only Triple Crown in Pac-10 history up until that point. So batting average, most home runs, and then just able to come away with some of the most incredible memories, but very different than what you see athletes having to put up with today. No social media, no internet, no stat awareness. And so the critic voices were very quiet back then, most of them coming from just my own head. So unfortunately, those are demons that we all battle as athletes, but luckily we didn't have to put up with a lot of outside noise.
Jenny, let's talk a little bit about the art of hitting in college softball. I'm amazed by the speeds with which the women throw, even though they're using an underhand, but a windmill approach. They're also throwing from a shorter distance than what we would see in college baseball or professional baseball. Tell us about the experience of having to hit as a softball player at the collegiate level. How hard is it?
Well, the miles an hour translated from softball pitching from 43 feet, a softball pitcher, the elite ones are throwing up to 73 miles an hour from 43 feet. So you make that calculation and translate it over to baseball, they're throwing 100 miles an hour at you. And so the time that it takes to make those decisions, you have to make the decision out of the hand, just like Major League Baseball. And so you learn those release points, you learn what the hand is doing. So when you talk about the art of hitting, a lot of it is just repetitions, making sure that you take those reps. The thing that's neat about athletes these days is they get the opportunity to not only get a lot of reps, but they have video analysis that they can sit at home and watch constantly. We did not have that. Our mentality back then was grip and rip or chuck and duck. So for us, we were just looking for release point and also spin rotation or spin rate, because a changeup typically has a slower spin rate. However, the really elite pitchers can keep that changeup spinning fast to fool the eye, even though the ball's coming a little bit slower. So for me, I actually felt like I was a pretty good changeup hitter. And some of my home runs came off of those changeups. And so what that meant was a lot of pitchers did not throw me those anymore. And the changeup is used for, to disrupt timing. And if a hitter's timing can be disrupted, they are often unsuccessful. And so for me, being able to hit the changeup, I didn't see it very often, which meant my timing was it was easier to stay on time and then just get on playing with the ball.
I think for a lot of people, there's this misconception of the ball in softball. It ain't soft. I've been hit by it. It doesn't feel good.
You're right. So softball actually, prior to 1993, softballs were made very similar to baseball, where it was the small core wrapped in string and then the leather outside. But in 1993, in the collegiate game, they switched to a poly core with a leather outside. That poly core is hard. And the purpose for changing the interior of the ball was to get more offense into the game. Well, because of that, the ball started flying. So I was the benefactor of not only a ball change, but then playing in Arizona where the ball really does fly.
Very interesting. You play for 4 years. You're a standout at Arizona. The team wins three national championships in 4 years. And then you have to make this immediate adjustment to playing baseball at the professional level when you join the Silver Bullets. I imagine that had to be very difficult, going not only from college to pro, but going from softball to baseball. Talk a little bit about that.
The biggest change for me was hitting. The swing was not the problem. It was picking up release points out of an overhand thrower. That to me was really, really difficult to pick up. But I will tell you, when I was done with the World Series in 1996, I thought I was done. I thought I was hanging up my cleats. The pro softball world did not pay very well. I had just gotten married and we needed money. I had graduated as an elementary school teacher. Had a job line to go and do that. Softball just wasn't going to pay. And so my coach at Arizona got a phone call from Bruce Crabb, who was the manager at the time for the Silver Bullets, and asked if there was anyone on the team that would be interested in trying out for the Colorado Silver Bullets. My coach brought the opportunity to me, but he prefaced it with, I don't know that this is something that you'll be interested in. I took that as a challenge. And I often wonder, I need to ask him if he phrased it like that on purpose, because he gave it as a challenge, like, I don't think this is something that you'd be interested in. I actually got with the baseball coaches at Arizona and asked if I could train in their cages and use their facility to get ready for my tryout that would be held just a couple months later.
It was a transition that you were able to make. The adjustment did occur. Tell us a little bit about some of the players that we see on the screen here. I know that I showed you these photographs about a week ago when we were doing a test call, but you remember all these players, right?
Of course. Well, and the thing that's fun is you remember them as nicknames, right? We may be old now, but we go back to being those 20-year-olds right there. So on your left, that's Shafi, and Shafi was one of our catchers. Great lady. She's now a police officer in Chicago. And there in the middle picture, you've got Habits, number 2. She is an assistant softball coach at the University of Alabama. I love running into her because I commentate with ESPN. I get to catch up with her every year. And that's one of my favorite games to be able to go in and see Alabama. And then you got Laura Purser over there on the right-hand side. She played softball at Oklahoma for the great Patty Gasto, who is still at Oklahoma. So it's crazy. When you show me these pictures, I literally feel like I am 20 years old again, but time passes.
Yeah.
But the friendships, the thing that's neat about this group is we've got a group text message still. I mean, it's been 27 years since we've played together, and we look at this and I didn't do my math right, but anyway, but when we look at this, we go right back to it, and we're encouraging each other and giving each other a hard time and making sure that everybody's doing okay.
You know, we take it for granted now that women players essentially wear the same uniform as male players do. But when we go back to when the Silver Bullets started in 1993, they were the first women's professional team since the players from the All-American Girls League in the 40s and 50s. They, of course, had to play in skirted uniforms, which I'm told initially most of the players hated. To think about that possibility of going back in time, what would your reaction have been if they said, you've got to play in a skirted uniform or you don't play at all?
I would slide head first a lot. No way I'd be going in feet first wearing a skirt unless I had pretty big leggings on. But that's one of the things that I'm so grateful for, is that we were able to play in pants, because you can be so much more aggressive. You can throw yourself on the field. You can dive and slide into bases. I am so impressed with what those women were able to accomplish back in the AAG, for them to be able to come forward and play with so much emotion and just aggressiveness in a skirt. I cannot imagine, but playing in pants, yeah, there's no other way to do it.
I'm curious about the road trips that you went on. Did you typically have a roommate or did you stay in the room solo?
So we always stayed with a roommate. That roommate stayed the same throughout your entire year. I'm sure it would change if there had been problems, but honestly, you're spending every single day with all of these women, the clubhouse to the hotel to the buses, and it wasn't a glamorous lifestyle. I mean, we call it pro baseball. It was very similar to the minor leagues, where you were on buses and bus trips for 7 hours in between. You were in a hotel maybe 2 nights, typically just 1 night, and moving on to the next location. I think we took 3 airline flights that year. Everything else was a bus. And we played from Alaska to Maine to California to Florida. So we zigzagged the entire country, with our home base staying in Albany, Georgia.
You were called the Colorado Silver Bullets, but that was not your home ever, right?
No, it was really fun to be able to play in the Rockies Stadium on the 4th of July. But no, that was not our home. It was named that because of our sponsor, Coors Light, and the um, product that they were pushing at the time of the Silver Bullet name tag. So.
Yeah. Why Albany, Georgia?
That's a great question. I would love to know why, because it was kind of the middle of nowhere, but we had a lot of teams that would come in and play us there. Our fan base grew as the years went on, and it was not always Albany, Georgia. Sometimes other years, the home base was in different places, but that year it just happened to be there. And then we were able to finish over 500 that year, which was the first time the Silver Bullets had ever done so. And we were able to do that at home in that stadium in Albany, Georgia.
As we can see in the photograph on the right, you played some major league locales, Fenway Park included. Tell us about some of the other major league ballparks or even familiar minor league ballparks that you had a chance to play in.
Oh, it was so fun to be able to just crisscross the country and go from minor league ballpark to minor league ballpark. And unfortunately, you wouldn't get to spend a lot of time in these places. You would show up for the game, you'd get to batting practice, get taped up, play the game, and then after the game, you're back on the bus. So I wish that I could tell you that we were able to just spend a lot of time in these places and really get to know the history and the players that were there. I will say the coolest memory that I had of playing in one of those big ballparks was at Fenway. We were able to go back behind the Green Monster and sign our name back on the wall, back behind the scoreboard. That was really cool to be able to just put your hands on that wall and see all the other players, the big names that had come before you, and just feel like you were a part of history.
How'd you like hitting at Fenway with that wall in the corner of your eye?
Man, that was messed up. To have to try to hit the ball over that thing, that's not okay. But when it came down to it, the thing that I was most disappointed when we came to this location, typically we would take BP, they'd roll out the turtle, put down the tarp, and we'd take BP on the field like every team does before a game.
Yeah.
At this location, there was a game before us. We didn't have time. And I was so excited to be able to take batting practice on this field and try to at least hit the top of the wall, but we didn't get to take batting practice, and none of my hits that night made it that far. So
yeah, you were more of a line drive hitter than someone who would hit, towering flies.
That's true. My job, I was always trying to hit it through you instead of over you. I know there's a lot of people that talk nowadays about launch angle and trajectory and all that. My mentality, I was a hitter that did not like to think. Coach would always call me unconscious and competent. Don't think, just react. And so for me, I was trying to hit it through people, not necessarily over them.
One of the interesting things that happened in 1997 was somewhat controversial, but I guess in a way entertaining as we look back in retrospect. That was the brawl that took place. You were playing a team called Americus, and there was an incident that got started involving the pitcher and catcher for Americus. The pitcher was Greg Dominy, I believe is how you say it. And the catcher was a guy named Jonathan Crumless. And apparently they got on the case of one of your players, Kim Bratz-Voisard. Tell us about that incident. What sparked this entire brawl?
Well, I think what you have to do is take a step back and look at everything that the Silver Bullets had to go through because of their creation. There is so many stigmas of girls playing baseball that are deep-seated and long-standing, that they can't compete, that they're not good enough, that they're not strong enough, that they're not fast enough, that they're not talented enough. The list goes on and on about all of the things that we are not capable of doing. Well, Kim Bratz-Voisard was a player that had played since the inauguration of the Silver Bullets. This was her 4th year. She had endured taunting, ridicule. The game itself is what we love, but the people that play it are not always of the highest caliber. And the Silver Bullets, when we took the field, umpires were not always a fan of us. The opposing team, we never played another female player. We always played male teams. So the stigmas were very rampant as we traveled the country. The comments were not quiet. The jeers and the stabs at us were intentional. And in this game, I think it just got to a boiling point for Kimmy. And when she was in the batter's box, the pitcher threw at her and missed her. And then the pitcher threw at her again, and he laughed. And there was a lot of jawing going on as a batter. The catchers were always in your ear. And I think on this night, Patsy was done. And so as the pitcher laughed, as she headed towards first base, instead of going to first, she took a hard left and went right at him. And because of that, our entire dugout cleared. And you wouldn't know that girls were fighting guys or that guys were fighting girls. There were punches being thrown, there were kicks being made. And, you know, it wasn't a pretty day. That's not what we stand for as the Silver Bullets. But I think there comes a point in time where you have to stand up for what's right. And in that moment, we stood behind our catcher or our player, Kim Bratz-Boissard, and we had her back because she may have been the one that charged the mound, but we all had that moment where we had just had enough.
So there was no hesitation. Every player left the dugout right away.
Every player up and out. And I'm not going to tell you that everybody was throwing punches, but you were in there trying to pull people off or figure out what it was that you needed to do. I'm not going to lie. I was not throwing punches. I was in a totally different world at that point. I did not know what to do. But I will tell you that the emotions that came from that were so raw, and they had been just sitting under the surface for so long. And I think that those emotions are very raw in female baseball players still today.
Yeah.
Parents and young men who play this amazing game think that girls can't do it. And they're not quiet all the time. They're usually pretty vocal about where we belong. And I think more than anything, what we were trying to prove with the Silver Bullets and what Bob Hope was trying to show by creating the Silver Bullets was that we do belong. We do have a place, we do have a voice, and we're good enough to be there.
Just want to mention for those not familiar, the Bob Hope that Jenny refers to is not the famous comedian. This is Bob Hope, baseball promoter. Used to work for the Atlanta Braves back in the 1970s, and he was the guy who put together a lot of their crazy promotions like Headlocks and Wedlocks nights, where they married like 15 couples, and then they had wrestling matches. And he did all sorts of creative things. He was one of the driving forces behind the Silver Bullets. Jenny, I want to get back to your role in the brawl. It sounds like you were more neutral. You just kind of went out there and maybe were waiting to see if you could help a teammate or play peacemaker. You admit you didn't get any shots in.
No, and I don't know. It's hard to say what was the right thing to do back then, but not all the guys were involved in it either, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't something where everyone was coming together and just knocked down drag out. You had the tip of the iceberg that just imploded because of the emotions that were there. And the rest of us were just trying to support our teammates. And of course, you're going to come out of the dugout. But I would say those 4-year players for the Colorado Silver Bullets were more than justified to be able to get in a couple good knocks because they had put up with so much. I was giving a talk one time, it's been about 5 or 6 years ago. And in this arena, it was me and then a male counterpart. We were both kind of speaking to this group, and he approached me. I was not speaking about the Silver Bullets, but I made a comment to him because he said he played baseball. And he said, "You played on the Colorado Silver Bullets?" I said, "I did." He said, "Oh, wow, we played against the Bullets. My team played against the Bullets in 1997. I said, "No kidding. That's the team that I played. You and I played against each other." He said, "What position did you play?" I said, "I played first base." And he said, "Did you have an African-American player on your team?" I said, "Yes, her name was Tamara Holmes, and she was amazing." And he said, man, I played first base for my team, and our pitcher had just thrown to Holmesy and she got a hit. And our pitcher was so mad that a girl had just got a hit off of him that he came over to me at first base. This is the gentleman speaking. He came over to me at first base and said, I'm hitting the next girl. Girls don't get a hit off of me. Well, needless to say, he talked him out of it. And that next batter was me. So he actually saved me.
Yeah. You know, I read several accounts of the game. There's no videotape, there's no film, but I did read several accounts. It appears the catcher for Americus, Jonathan Crumbless, was yapping the entire game, was taunting the batters as they came up, saying things, and it was repeated. And then, as you said, when the pitcher, Domini, started laughing, that was kind of the final straw. So while I'm not here to justify violence, I think the reaction of the players is justified. At some point in time, you do have to take a stand and say, we're just not going to put up with it. And I think that's what the team did back in 1997. So I think it's a perfectly defensible situation. Here's what I don't understand, though. You said a few moments ago that not only did the Silver Bullets get taunted by players on other teams, but they also heard remarks from the umpires. Why would the umpires care who the players are?
I don't know that there was ever a situation where an umpire made a comment to me about how I didn't belong. But you can read body language and you can read, you know, you can see them yapping it up with the first baseman on the other team. But then when I get out there, he's silent. He doesn't approach me. One of the ways that I tried to use a situation early on in a ball game, I mean, the umpire's right behind you at first base for most of the game. So as we would take the field, very similarly to a catcher turning around and talking to the umpire before the game, I would make it a point that when I took the field, I would introduce myself and tell him that my husband was in the stands or that my husband at home. I think that gave him a sense of, oh, you're a person too. Yeah. You're not just out here trying to, you know, rule the world. You're trying to make a living, number one, but also you're human. And I tried to humanize our team to those umpires that were playing behind us. And then they would loosen up and chat with me during the game. But yeah, they were very uncomfortable not knowing what to expect because we were not having the same umpires all the time. It was a new umpiring crew every single game because we were in a new location every single game. So just trying to break down those walls and humanize who we were and what we were trying to do to just let them know that it's okay, call the game. We're not here to be different.
Did you feel that you consistently as a team got a fair shake from the umpires?
Oh, 100%. I don't know that the umpires were out to do anything that would give us any kind of disadvantage. They were very professional. I just know that they were very uncomfortable. That was a situation they had never been in. And so our job was to continually break down barriers, not only with understanding who we were, but showing that we could be a class act and just play the game. That was our goal.
How about the fans in general? How did they treat the Silver Bullets?
You know what? That was maybe my favorite part because dads had always taken their little girls to Major League Baseball games or minor league games, get a ball, you know, go to the concession stand, just have an afternoon with their daughter. Well, now this was an opportunity for them to bring their daughter to the ballpark and have her see someone that looked like her and give her a picture of what she could be one day. And that was the coolest thing, to see these dads bring their daughters down after the game and we could sign, you know, our baseball cards, or we could sign a baseball and she could take it home and she could realize I could do this too. And it just gave these young girls such a neat opportunity to realize they didn't have to feel different because there were girls out there doing it too.
Sounds like very much a family atmosphere at these games.
Very much so. Being in the ballpark, it was very minor league baseball, just a lot of hoopla, a lot of fun, minor league games are just very different than a major league game. A major league game does have promotions going on, but the minor league game just has a much more friendly and accepting and kind of chaotic atmosphere. And that's how the Silver Bullets ran the promotions and everything behind the scenes, just to include everyone, because that's what we wanted to be. We wanted to be included too.
By the time that you joined the franchise in 1997, Phil Niekro had been the manager, but was now the general manager of the Silver Bullets, but a guy that was around the team, somebody you got to know very well. He was beloved here in Cooperstown. I always called him kind of the new Bob Feller. Bob Feller, for the years that he was alive, never missed an induction, no matter what. He was here from every induction from 1962, his own, up until the year that he passed away due to leukemia. He would come here in the middle of winter if we asked him. He would come at any time of the year to do even the smallest of events here in Cooperstown. Phil Niekro was kind of that guy. He was kind of the new Bob Feller, and he loved Cooperstown. He was great with the staff, great with the fans. I know that you have positive feelings about him, as everybody does. But can you tell us about the first time you met Phil, and what were the kind of things you talked about?
I mean, let's be honest. I was scared out of my mind the first time I met Phil. I mean, he was bigger than life. I had watched him on TV. He was successful. He had played for so many years. And so the first time I met him, it was my first day at spring training. And everybody just had, uniform on, stretching lines, running lines. The thing that I loved about Phil is he would walk through our stretching lines and just talk, be real, be human, and let us feel like we were enough by just being who we were. My favorite thing about Phil was just his smile. He was always smiling. He was always positive. He was always helping. He would say, "All right, JD." So my name was Jenny Dalton. "All right, JD, let's see that knuckleball of yours." Well, as soon as he said that, I'm like, oh my gosh, so much pressure. What am I going to do? I only threw one knuckleball ever in front of Phil, and it was a good one. And I was so excited. He's like, "We'll make you a pitcher yet there, JD." And I thought, well, but I'm so grateful that one came out well.
Yeah. You never pitched in an actual game for the Silver Bullets. This was on the side, right?
No, this was just warming up before a game as he was walking through and chatting with us before the game. It was all in good fun, but we called him Skipper. He was our skipper.
Yeah. Did he talk a lot about being in the major leagues? Did you try to extract information, stories about his days in Atlanta?
Well, you have to remember, we spent a lot of time not at baseball parks, sitting on buses and just kind of at practice, sitting around. So Phil would tell us stories all the time. My favorite stories, though, were the ones where we were actually in a ballpark and he would have a story or a memory about that place. And I know your follow-up question is going to be, well, what were some of those stories? I don't remember. The thing that I remember about Phil was just how he treated us. He called us his beautiful ladies. We were his silver bullets. We were his, and he was protective over us. He did not allow men to treat us differently. He made sure that he protected us. He would go out and treat us like a ball player. When we were on the field, we were his ball players. When we were off the field, we were women, and he treated us with so much respect and so much love. I mean, just the ultimate manager for that kind of group. I think they picked the perfect one.
Was there an instance where he physically had to come to the defense of the players? Maybe not during a game, but before a game or after a game? Was there a time where he went up to somebody and said, "Hey, you really shouldn't be saying those things"?
I think he had to do that a lot, honestly. But the thing about Phil is he was not going to bring that to our attention. He was not going to say, "I just stood up for you."
Right.
I think he was constantly putting his name on the line by being our manager. So how we played was a direct reflection on him. And so he held us to very high standards. There was you did not mess around. You were there to play ball. You were there to play to the best of your ability. You hustled everything out. You hustled on and off the field. You acted with class. For me, playing for Phil, it was a great transition for me because there was this level of organization and respect that he made sure we all worked with. And that was the expectation. We're ball players, but we also always carry ourselves with class.
Earlier in the Silver Bullets' existence, Phil's brother Joe was very active as one of the coaches, pitching coach with the franchise. I think by 97, he was pretty much out of that role, but I believe you met him at some point, right?
Joe was around, right?
Yeah.
So our coaches at the time, so Phil was our general manager, Bruce Crabb was our field manager, and then we had Al Bunbury, John Niekro, which was Phil's son, and Joe Zeckley. That was the coaching staff for us. And so as we traveled, I mean, tell me someone who didn't know Phil. I mean, we were going to baseball parks, for crying out loud. Everybody wanted to get to know him and have a piece of him. So no matter where we went, Skipper always had a friend that he could introduce us to or that he wanted to share with us. I mean, there were people in and out of the dugout that it was just amazing to be able to sit there. And these were his friends, but to us, they were idols.
I didn't know that Al Bunbury was one of the coaches there. He's an interesting guy. He was in Vietnam, and I want to say he got the bronze medal for his bravery in Vietnam. Did you talk to Al much? Did he bring up Vietnam? Did you talk at all about that?
He didn't talk about that.
No.
The thing that was kind of unique about our situation is we talked baseball a lot. Bunbury, Al was our base running coach. He was the one teaching us like how to get leads, how to steal, how to make turns, how to read the ball, how to read the pitcher. I mean, that was kind of he was such a good base runner himself. And so he was trying to pass that stuff on to us. And so that was where a lot of our conversations revolved around.
Yeah, he was a great leadoff man with the Baltimore Orioles, playing for Earl Weaver in the early to mid 1970s. Let's talk a little bit more about Phil Niekro and his induction. Here's a photograph of that day back in 1997. I was there somewhere. I had just joined the Hall of Fame staff back in 1995. I don't have a lot of specific memories of that day, other than to believe it was probably pretty darn hot, because it is every induction Sunday. And it was, as you can see, a pretty good sized crowd. And you and the other players were there. We're going to talk about that in a moment. We want to first play for everybody a little bit of Phil's induction speech from 1997, where he talks specifically about his involvement, about the Silver Bullets, and why it meant so much to him.
Back in the fall of 1993, a friend of mine named Bob Hope called me and asked me if I would consider managing a women's professional baseball. And I said, Bob, I don't think so. I said, I played baseball all my life, and I don't know. After I realized what the story was about, and that the Coors Brewing Company was going to put the money behind this program, I said I would. So I'm going to have to thank, and I would like to thank Mr. Prita Coors and Leo Kiley for stepping forward, finding this country, at least giving these women the chance to play baseball. I know a lot of people don't agree with it, maybe can't understand it. My feeling is this is America. And this is the land of the free and the home of the brave. And all they want is a chance to play baseball and an opportunity. And I think that's what this country can give them. And I figure, hey, they've gone to wars for us and died for us. They pay their taxes and they vote. In 1960, when tennis champion Bobby Riggs said that men deserve better treatment than women because they're better players, found out differently when Billie Jean King beat him in the straight match set. So I'm honored, very privileged to be a part of an organization for the past 4 years. And I would like to introduce you along with the coaches and the owners, the 1997 Colorado Silver Bullets, right over there.
The camera didn't actually show you in that video, but you were there that day, Jenny. Go through your thoughts. What are you thinking about when you heard Phil talk about you, not by name, but obviously talked meaningfully about this whole Silver Bullets experience? What was that like hearing that?
It's just kind of surreal. But at the same time, that's the Phil we knew. That was the Phil, the genuine, heartfelt, that's how he really, truly felt about the Colorado Silver Bullets. He felt we deserved a shot. And because he was bought into that idea, we felt we deserved a shot too. You know, it's just so hard as a female trying to play a game dominated by men that we just want a little portion. But also at the same time, we also know we want the whole pie too. So the thing that's neat about Phil, and at that same day, Tommy Lasorda was actually inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I know that Phil was worried because, you know, Lasorda was known as a speaker. He was known as the orator who could tell stories and so well spoken. And Phil was worried that he couldn't do the same thing. But the thing that made Phil who he was the heart that he had. And that's what came through in his induction speech, was just that genuine Phil. He truly felt all of those words. That was not just fluff. And we knew that because that's how he treated us all the time. And so the thing that was cool about that induction ceremony was just, we were there the day before and able to walk the streets and see all the big names that were signing autographs on, is it Main Street? Out in front of, so out on Main Street, and just all of the tables set up with all of the big names that we had watched forever on TV were signing autographs and shaking hands and meeting people. And to me, to know that Phil was part of that made it even more awe-inspiring to be able to take the field for him when we did take the field the next time, to see how many people were out there loving him and supporting him, all the signs in the crowd just cheering for him. And he was just so well loved, and we loved him too.
This is a beautiful photograph that was taken after the induction ceremony. You can see Phil is kind of center left, proudly holding his Hall of Fame plaque, which is now in our gallery. It's been there ever since. You are the one seated, well, on one knee, I guess, on the far left. And I did not recognize that was you. You haven't changed that much, but I don't know, maybe it was the sun or the angle. I didn't recognize that it was you in this photograph. Let me ask you about Cooperstown. You had a chance to actually stay overnight, which a lot of people, they're so rushed, they come in, they leave town, they don't get the full experience, but you did have a chance to stay overnight in town. What'd you think of our tiny little village?
Oh, it was so amazing. Just the history that's there, you know, being able to see, is it Doubleday Ballpark? Is that the name?
Doubleday Field.
Doubleday Field back behind. We walk over there. But to me, it was walking through the Hall of Fame itself that was so cool. Just being able to see the artifacts that you have and see the history that is there, and just, it just oozes tradition. And so to be able to walk through the exhibits and walk through and see all of the names that had come before, but also just feel how important that place really is to the game that we were playing at that time.
Yeah. Have you been back since?
I have not. I need to take a trip. I was talking to my husband today about this call, and he said, we need to go to Cooperstown. I said, yes, we do. So after COVID, Bruce, you can plan on a visit from me.
All right, we'll definitely give you a tour without question, and hopefully that'll be sooner rather than later. On a tough note, the team came to an end after that 1997 season. The team was really just starting to hit its stride. For the first time in franchise history, the Silver Bullets were above 500. They're being very competitive, playing against all male teams. And then you get the news that the beer company that has been your sponsor decided they weren't going to do it anymore. What was your initial reaction to that? I mean, how crushing was it?
You know, it meant that the dream was going away, honestly. I mean, and you can't fault Coors. They had put up, you know, almost $8 million for those 4 years. And for us, that was our lifeline to be able to do what we were doing and to have the quality of the staff that we had and play in the locations that we did. And so without their support, it was impossible to be able to do that anymore. But I applaud them for giving us those 4 years. But I also understand that business models change. I wish that we had found another sponsor to step forward so that we could continue, because you're right. We had found our stride. We were finding quality players. I think in the beginning, when the team started, it was in its infancy and the word just wasn't able to be spread. There was no internet, like you said. So it was phone calls, it was connections, it was trying to be able to just get a hold of those athletes that could transition or that had been playing baseball in those nooks and crannies across America that didn't have an opportunity to play. And so who we were was able to get out there, and we were more visible. We were making the news. We were able to have a voice and have a presence in the places that we played. And unfortunately, we were not able to continue that, but I can only imagine what would have happened if we had been able to continue to play. I mean, we were playing the college teams up in the Cape. We were playing the college teams in Anchorage, Alaska. We were not the college teams, but those college players that go there to train in the off season. And we played the Nicaraguan national team. I thought that I got sawed off so hard against the Nicaraguan national team. He threw me so hard inside. I got jammed. I thought my hand broke off, but I beat it out because the ball didn't go anywhere. It was like a bunt, for crying out loud. But I got back to the dugout after that game. And you know, those little like thumb protectors that you can wear when you're in a bat? There was a pile of like 10 of them sitting on my glove waiting for me because I got jammed and rocked so hard. But, you know, just to see the progression and the success that these teams were having, it is actually devastating to think about the fact that that was it. And then not until 2004 was there another opportunity for women's baseball to be able to get together, when USA Baseball formed the women's national team and brought back a lot of these Colorado Silver Bullets on that first team in 2004.
You played on that team, right? And then you coached later on.
I did, you know, and Bruce, the crazy thing is I didn't even know it was a thing. After the Silver Bullets disbanded, I was married, I went to teach 5th grade, and I had a child. And so by 2004, I had 3 kids. I was living in Lexington, Kentucky. I didn't know about it. I actually didn't hear about it until 2010. And in 2010, Kim Brotz-Boissard, the one that we talked about earlier, my teammate, she said, "Jenny, you need to try out." I said, "For what?" She said, "For USA Baseball. They have a team." I said, "You're kidding me." But it had been 13 years since I had put on cleats. My last game with the Colorado Silver Bullets was the last time I had picked up a ball and played a game of baseball or softball. Like, I just didn't play anymore.
Yeah.
And when she told me that, there was just that fire in my belly thinking, I can do this again. But I was so worried that age had caught up with me and I wasn't going to be good enough or fast enough or strong enough. But in 2010, I tried out in Florida. They had regional tryouts and was given an opportunity to go into training camp, and then selected for that 2010 team that went and played for in the World Cup in Venezuela that year.
Not many players come out of retirement after 13 years and do well, but apparently you did it. So,
well, and Bruce, the crazy thing is my kids were playing, you know, Little League at the time. They're actually playing Cal Ripken baseball at the time. So where did I train? You betcha, with a bunch of 12-year-olds. And the dads all wanted to throw baseball or throw BP to the mom who thought she could hit. Well, I hit a bunch of dads and I broke a bunch of cell phones because they didn't think that this mom could hit, but that was my job. So it was fun because it opened the eyes of everybody at that ballpark that girls can play baseball at a high level too.
You can still play now, right?
I will tell you that after that 2010 push in Venezuela, I had a lot of hip issues. So I had to have my hip replaced actually after that. So those who can't do anymore coach, right? Yeah. So then in 2012, I picked up the coaching hat and have been with USA Baseball ever since.
We have a few minutes remaining with our guest, Jenny Dalton-Hill. We have a number of people that have jumped into our chat room with questions. So let's try to get to as many of those as we can. First one is from Reg Jones, one of our regular viewers. Reg wants to know, Where did Jenny grow up, and how did she get into playing softball? And did she play other sports as a youngster?
Hey, Reg, thanks for joining. So I grew up in Glendale, California, right near the Rose Bowl. And I played every sport imaginable. My mom and dad put me in everything. I actually played 5 sports in high school because I just love to play. So I played volleyball, basketball, softball, track, and badminton. And so if it was raining, if my softball game got rained out, I would go throw the shot put, but I wasn't allowed to throw shot put with my right hand because my dad didn't want to hurt my throwing arm. So I broke the school record with my left hand.
Was softball always your best sport?
You know, I felt like softball was going to give me longevity. I don't know that it was the sport that I loved the most when I was playing volleyball and basketball. I also played soccer, but with softball, more doors were opening in the softball world. And so that's why I stuck with softball. My first recruiting letter was actually for volleyball that I had so much fun with, but I'd never played club volleyball, and it was going to take a lot. There was going to be a lot of work to catch up to play in the volleyball world. And there were just a lot of doors opening for softball. So that was why I went that direction. And growing up, I actually played against a player of the year that would come after me in 1997. So, or maybe 98. Anyway, her name was Nancy Evans. She was a pitcher in Glendale, and I was the big hitter in Glendale. So our whole lives were spent trying to beat the other person. And I really credit her to making me a better hitter, because the two of us had to go head to head all the time, being crosstown rivals. And we ended up being able to play together at Arizona. And that's why a lot of those national championships, I think, happened because of that early relationship, and also the challenge that I had to have growing up. Thank you, Reg, for letting me walk down memory lane.
Question from Bill Marston. You played for a number of different coaches. Which ones had the biggest impact on your own coaching style?
Well, and just so you know, Bill is actually the father of Jenna Marston, who played with me in 2010 in Venezuela. So Jenna was actually our player of the year for the women's national team, an amazing athlete who played softball at Missouri. So which ones made the most impact? I'll say there was a coach in middle school before we had like organized sports for the high school. And I was winning all of the games in middle school in our PE class. And his name was Dennis Oliver. And he brought me into his office one day and he said, "Jenny, are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, Mr. Oliver, I'm doing fine. Why?" He says, "I just know that winning can be hard, and you are much different than the other girls that are out there. And I want you to know that it's okay to be different." And at the time I took it in stride, like, yeah, I know I'm different and I'm okay with being different. But that was his way of supporting me and letting me know it was okay to not back down, to always try to beat the boys, which is what I was always trying to do anyway. And then the next coach that had the most influence on me was Mike Candrea at the University of Arizona. He truly was the man who shaped my career into what it was. Prior to getting to Arizona, I did not know mechanics. I did not know, biometrics. None of that stuff was part of the game for me early on. I had never had a private lesson, where I feel like everybody has private lessons anymore. But back then, I was just an athlete. And when I got to the University of Arizona, Coach Candrea taught me what the mechanics were and why they needed to be used. A lot of them were just little tweaks. My body had accommodated and just done the athletic move, which is a lot of times what we're asking athletes to do. But he gave me the why behind everything that I did. So I will say he is the one person in my life that I can credit a lot of just the fine tuning. And then who's your first coach? Well, Mr. Marston, I'm sure it was you for Jenna too. For me, it was my dad. And my dad gave me so many opportunities, and my mom supported me through all of them. So those are the people that stand out to me.
Very good. Here's not a question, but kind of a testimonial, but it's such a nice note. I'd like to read it. It's from John Shatraw. John writes, "I had the opportunity to play against the Silver Bullets in Watertown, New York back in 1996. So that would have been the year before Jenny joined. If I recall correctly, we lost the game, but I did come away with an autographed silver bullet baseball. Thank you for what you did for women in professional baseball. So a nice note from John. And then we have a question coming in. And this is another one from Reg. It's a good one, though. So I don't hesitate to go to Reg for a second time. He wants to know, do any female teams like the Silver Bullets exist today? If so, do they play in female leagues, or are their women's teams still playing against men?
So there are opportunities for females to play, but right now getting them all together in one place is more difficult. We do see younger baseball teams that are all female being put together, but the problem is they come from far away and have to travel to get into these tournaments together. So while they are there, they are not the norm. The only team that I know of that really promotes the game and also that camaraderie is the women's national team. And during COVID, they've had to be under, the stay at home, can't get together. And so the 2020 games that were supposed to happen did not, they were canceled, and the 2021 games as well have been canceled. So we'll all be looking forward to the Olympic Games happening in Tokyo. But right now, the pockets for females playing baseball are small. More than anything, we just need to build men and young men's awareness that girls can play too, and not try to stifle those opportunities. A lot of times the girls playing baseball at the young ages, in T-ball and then into coach pitch, the field for guys changes once they turn, 12, right? They go to the field. So that's typically when you see the female athlete being pushed to go to softball. But that's not where a lot of girls' hearts lie. They love the game of baseball. And so giving them opportunities to play on the big field, not pushing them towards softball, that's what we're looking for. We're not wanting, we don't want to be excluded. We want to keep having opportunities to play the game that makes our heart beat. So a lot of girls, though, recognize that there are more opportunities in the softball world. So that's when you start to see them exit the game of baseball and head to softball, is that year between 12 and 13 when the field changes for baseball. But that field that they've been playing on for baseball at the younger levels is the same exact field they play on for softball.
We should put you in touch with Sue Zepay, former player in the All-American Girls League. She was our guest 1 week ago, and one of the things that Sue is trying to do, and I think we mentioned this to you as well, is that Sue wants to start a new women's league based out of Florida. She's hoping to start it, sometime in the near future. Maybe start modestly with 4 teams and they'll let it grow from there. I would love to see it happen. Whenever I do programs, especially our Women in Baseball program, the kids always ask me, why isn't there a women's league? Is there going to be a women's league? I wish I had better answers for them, but hopefully it's going to happen.
Well, and there is an organization called Baseball for All, headed up by Justine Siegel. And that organization works tirelessly to find opportunities for females to play baseball, whether it's getting female teams put together or just helping them be, involved in the boys leagues where they are. So that is a great organization that gives a voice for these female athletes trying to play the game.
We know Justine. She has been a frequent visitor here to Cooperstown and very committed to the cause of women playing the game today. Final question for our guest, Jenny Dalton-Hill. You are a broadcaster for ESPN. Tell us about your next assignment. What's coming up for you this spring?
So each week we have a podcast called the 7 Innings Podcast through ESPN, where we highlight the news and notes of the week. That'll be taped tomorrow. It comes out on Thursday every week. But then also each week we anxiously await the email to let us know where we're going to be that week. So without airplanes and rental cars, we prep and talk to coaches. This week I'll be covering the Arkansas-South Carolina game on the SEC Network on Sunday.
And women's softball collegiately, is it pretty much proceeding as normal now, given all the virus restrictions?
when it comes to how is it proceeding, the game itself is not being impacted. You'll see athletes wearing masks. You'll see umpires wearing masks. The thing that's different is the fan base. And that's what we've seen impacted all over the country, no matter what sport you're talking about, is just being able to play in front of the fans. And I've had some parents say, you know, they shouldn't play if I, as a parent, can't be there to watch. And I think, you know what, these kids have been asked to do something none of us have ever been asked to do. And I think that asking them to not play because we can't be there isn't fair. They want to be on the field. And whether we can cheer for them or not, the one thing we can do is just let them know that we love to watch them play when we get to watch them play. So.
Absolutely. Our guest has been Jenny Dalton-Hill. It's been a pleasure to have her on the show for the last hour. We really appreciate Jenny's time. We also want to thank the Ford Motor Company for their generous support of programs like this. Jenny, thank you very much. Really have enjoyed it. We do hope that you can come to Cooperstown sometime in the near future.
You know I'll be there. And Bruce, I'll be looking you up for a one-on-one tour of the Hall of Fame.
We'll help you out, definitely. Thank you, Jenny. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks to everybody for participating. We hope you've enjoyed the program. Have a great day, everybody.